Brutal penalties experienced after the Bahrain tests. Stay until the end to see the shocking penalty for Hamilton. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. The long, agonizing wait is finally over. After months of anticipation, speculation, and endless debates about team strategies, driver moves, and car development, the unmistakable roar of Formula One engines once again fills the air. The 2025 season has officially begun, and the motorsport world is fixated on the Bahrain International Circuit, where the first true test of performance and reliability is underway. Pre-season testing is more than just an opportunity for teams to shake down their new machinery. It is the moment where the pecking order begins to take shape, where the strongest contenders start flexing their muscles, and where the early season mind games between engineers, strategists, and drivers begin in earnest. Every single lap matters. Every fraction of a second counts. This is the first battleground in a war that will rage across continents for the next 10 months. The excitement is electric as the pit lane bursts into action. Mechanics swarm around the cars with laser-like focus, double-checking every detail, fine-tuning setups, and ensuring that nothing is left to chance. Engineers stare intently at rows of glowing telemetry screens, monitoring tire temperatures, fuel loads, and aerodynamic efficiency with surgical precision. Team principals pace nervously, their faces betraying the high stakes of the moment. At precisely 10 a.m. local time, the pit lane light turns green, and the first cars roll onto the track, their high-pitched wails echoing through the desert air. Cameras zoom in, fans around the world hold their breath, and just like that, the 2025 Formula One season is truly underway. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. The biggest spectacle of the day comes almost immediately. All eyes are on one man, Lewis Hamilton, in red. The sight of the 7-time world champion emerging from the Ferrari garage is surreal, a moment destined to be etched into the sport's history. As he pulls down his visor and lowers himself into the cockpit, the world watches in silence. This is more than just another pre-season outing. This is the dawn of a new era. The Tifosi, desperate for a hero to end their team's championship drought, pin their hopes on him. His rivals, knowing full well what he is capable of, watch closely for any sign of weakness. The team that once dominated him now stands on the other side of the battlefield. He fires up the engine, the car jolts forward, and he is gone, storming out onto the circuit with a confidence that suggests he has unfinished business. But Hamilton is not the only storyline commanding attention. Across the paddock, Mercedes finds itself in unfamiliar territory. For the first time in more than a decade, the Silver Arrows begin a season without their legendary driver. The responsibility now falls on George Russell, who steps into the role of team leader with a quiet determination. Yet, it is the presence of a new face in the other garage that sends waves through the paddock. Kimi Antonelli, the teenage sensation many believe to be the future of the sport, makes his debut in Mercedes colors. At just 18 years old, he is about to take his first official steps in the world of Formula One, carrying the weight of immense expectations. Toto Wolff, a man rarely prone to hyperbole, has spoken of him in glowing terms, fueling speculation that he might just be the next great talent to emerge. Today marks his first true test. Elsewhere, Red Bull approaches the session with their usual air of quiet dominance. Max Verstappen, now a 3-time world champion, arrives with a presence that exudes confidence, even inevitability. He does not need to prove anything, his record speaks for itself, but that does not mean he will take things easy. His first laps are smooth, efficient, clinical. There is an aura around him that suggests he knows something the rest of the grid does not. But while he is secure in his position, the same cannot be said for his teammate. Sergio Perez, whose performances in 2024 were inconsistent at best, enters the season with everything to prove. The Mexican knows his seat is far from guaranteed, and with young, hungry talents knocking at Red Bull's door, he cannot afford a slow start. His first few laps are under intense scrutiny, his every movement analyzed by both his team and his critics. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. Further down the grid, McLaren continues its rapid ascent, determined to establish itself as a genuine frontrunner. Lando Norris, still chasing his first F1 victory, attacks the track with ferocity, eager to send a message. Oscar Piastri, cool and methodical, quietly goes about his work, showing no signs of second-year nerves. Aston Martin, having impressed in the early stages of 2024 before fading, looks to sustain its momentum. Fernando Alonso, ever the relentless competitor, wastes no time in pushing the limits, eager to extract every last ounce of performance from his machine. Meanwhile, the midfield battle promises to be as cutthroat as ever. Williams, rebounding from years in the wilderness, appears resurgent. Haas, traditionally viewed as a backmarker, carries cautious optimism after major investment. Alpine, still searching for consistency, hopes to turn things around. And then there is RB, the newly rebranded junior team of Red Bull, where drivers fight not just for points, but for their very futures. As the session progresses, data starts to flow in, and patterns begin to emerge. Some teams focus on outright pace, pushing for headline-grabbing lap times. Others prioritize long runs, simulating race conditions. Aerodynamic rakes and flow-vis paint cover the cars, allowing engineers to analyze airflow in microscopic detail. The sun climbs higher, the track temperature rises, and the ever-changing conditions force teams to adapt on the fly. Reliability issues begin to surface. Ferrari faces cooling problems, forcing Hamilton to remain in the garage for nearly an hour. Red Bull makes late adjustments to the rear wing after noticing instability in high-speed corners. McLaren battles unexpected vibrations in the floor of their car. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. Then, just as things begin to settle, drama strikes. A red flag halts proceedings as a car stops on track. One of the rookies, pushing too hard, has spun into the barriers. Marshals rush to recover the stricken machine, while teams seize the opportunity to dissect their data. Every lap counts. Every adjustment matters. No one can afford to waste time. The minutes tick away, the sun begins to set, and with the final laps of the day completed, the session comes to a close. But the real work is only just beginning. Back in the garages, engineers pore over mountains of data. Tire degradation, fuel efficiency, power unit performance, every variable is scrutinized. Drivers debrief with their teams, analyzing every minor detail, looking for areas to improve. Team principals hold hushed meetings, discussing strategies, assessing their rivals, calculating their next moves. And outside the circuit, the speculation begins. Fans dissect lap times, searching for hidden clues. Analysts debate who looks strong and who might be in trouble. Social media explodes with theories and predictions. Some are convinced Ferrari has been sandbagging, hiding their true potential. Others believe Red Bull's dominance remains unchallenged. Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, where do they truly stand? The answers will not come today. Not yet. But one thing is certain, the season has started, and the battle for supremacy has begun. The journey ahead will be long, brutal, and unpredictable. Every race will bring new twists. Every decision will have consequences. Every driver will face their defining moment. The quest for glory has started, and the road to the championship will be paved with triumph and heartbreak. This is Formula One at its finest. And this is only the beginning. Subscribe only if you want Hamilton to win his 8th World Championship and be crowned as the greatest driver in history. Red Bull wasted no time in making their intentions clear. With Max Verstappen absent for the morning session, all eyes were on Liam Lawson, the team's young reserve driver, who had been given the crucial responsibility of opening Red Bull's testing program. And he did not disappoint. The moment the pit lane light turned green, Lawson attacked the track with precision and aggression, sending a clear message to the rest of the grid. His lap times were electric, consistently topping the timing sheets, leaving no doubt that Red Bull had once again produced a machine capable of dominating the field. It was a statement of intent, a psychological blow to the competition before the season had even begun. But Red Bull wasn't the only team making waves. Mercedes, after a turbulent 2024 campaign, was determined to prove that their struggles were behind them. Lewis Hamilton, a driver who thrives under pressure, ensured that Red Bull wouldn't run away unchallenged. He slotted in closely behind Lawson, putting in a series of competitive laps that suggested Mercedes might finally have a package capable of fighting at the front again. The W15 looked stable, precise, and most importantly, consistent. Hamilton's radio messages were encouraging, praising the balance of the car while his lap time suggested a competitive edge that had been missing in previous seasons. The atmosphere in the Mercedes garage was one of cautious optimism. The engineers, typically subdued during testing, exchanged knowing glances. Perhaps this was the year they could return to title contention. Meanwhile, Ferrari's newest prodigy, Kimi Antonelli, was stealing headlines. Despite his rookie status, Antonelli delivered an eye-catching performance that defied expectations. The young Italian was composed, methodical, and fast, very fast. By the end of the first hour, he had cemented himself in the top three, showing a maturity and adaptability that belied his experience level. Ferrari, under immense pressure to break their title drought, seemed quietly confident. The SF25 looked like an evolution of its predecessor but with crucial refinements aimed at improving tire degradation, one of the team's Achilles' heels in past seasons. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz observed Antonelli's performance closely from the Ferrari garage, knowing that the young Italian wasn't just a future talent. He was already proving himself to be a legitimate contender. But pre-season testing is more than just raw speed. It's a high-speed game of chess where every move is calculated, every decision analyzed to the smallest detail. Over at McLaren, their approach was far more reserved. Oscar Piastri completed only a handful of laps in the opening session, leading to speculation about the team's strategy. Was this a sign of early trouble, or were they deliberately keeping their cards close to their chest? McLaren had been one of the most improved teams in 2024, and there was a sense that they had more to show than they were willing to reveal. Lando Norris, watching from the sidelines, remained tight-lipped, offering only cryptic remarks about the team's confidence in their long-run pace. In the Aston Martin garage, Fernando Alonso was in deep discussion with his engineers, meticulously analyzing data from his early runs. The AMR24 looked promising in certain aspects, strong in high-speed corners, efficient on straights, but Alonso, ever the perfectionist, wasn't entirely satisfied. "We need more front-end grip," he reported over the radio. His eyes, sharp as ever, darted between the screens, searching for clues, searching for areas to improve. Testing wasn't just about setting fast lap times. It was about understanding every aspect of the car before the real fight began in race conditions. Alonso knew better than anyone that a strong pre-season test meant nothing if the car couldn't deliver under the intense pressure of a Grand Prix weekend. Meanwhile, further down the paddock, things were not as smooth for teams like Haas and Williams. Haas found themselves plagued by reliability issues before the session even reached its midpoint. Kevin Magnussen's early runs were repeatedly interrupted by mechanical gremlins, forcing the team to make constant adjustments. The frustration was evident on the faces of the engineers. Every lost lap meant lost data, and in Formula One, data was everything. At Williams, Logan Sargent spent more time in the garage than on track, raising concerns about whether the team had truly made a step forward over the winter. Every minute wasted in the garage meant valuable track time slipping away, time that could be the difference between fighting for points or languishing at the back of the grid once the season started. As the day progressed, teams began switching to race simulations, filling their cars with fuel and running long stints to assess tire degradation. This was where the real performance indicators started to emerge. A car could be quick over one lap, but if it struggled with tire wear, it would be exposed over a full race distance. Red Bull, with Verstappen now in the cockpit, looked ominously strong. His long-run pace was relentless, his lap times hardly dropping off, lap after lap. If anyone had harbored hopes of Red Bull losing their dominance, Verstappen's performance was a reality check. He was still the benchmark, and the RB20, despite its evolutionary design, was still a monster on track. Mercedes continued their program, focusing on consistency rather than outright speed. George Russell's afternoon session was encouraging, smooth, controlled, and devoid of any major issues. The W15 seemed kinder to its tires than its predecessor, a critical factor if Mercedes wanted to mount a serious title challenge. Russell's feedback echoed Hamilton's, positive but cautiously so. There was still work to be done, but for the first time in 2 seasons, Mercedes looked like they might have a genuine contender on their hands. Ferrari, too, showed signs of promise. Leclerc's race simulations were competitive, but the true test would come when the fuel loads were balanced, and the engine maps were unleashed to their fullest extent. Carlos Sainz, ever diligent, worked through his own program, providing valuable feedback to the team. There was an air of determination in the Ferrari garage, an understanding that they had a real chance to disrupt Red Bull's dominance, but only if they could get everything right. As the sun began to set over the Bahrain International Circuit, the first day of testing came to a close, leaving behind a mixture of intrigue, speculation, and unanswered questions. Had McLaren hidden their true pace? Could Mercedes finally challenge for wins again? Was Ferrari truly ready to fight Red Bull? And most importantly, had Red Bull done enough over the winter to maintain their iron grip on the championship? The only certainty was that the 2025 Formula One season was shaping up to be one of the most unpredictable in years. Every team had something to prove, every driver had a point to make, and every lap in testing carried weight. The battle lines were being drawn, the mind games were already underway, and in just a few weeks, the talking would stop. When the lights went out in Bahrain for the first race of the season, there would be no more hiding. The time for speculation would be over. The real fight was about to begin. Further down the paddock, Alpine appeared to be a team reborn, shaking off the weight-related struggles that had plagued them in previous seasons. Their car, often criticized for being overweight and sluggish in crucial phases of a race, now seemed nimble, responsive, and most importantly, consistent. The Enstone-based team had endured a turbulent couple of years, oscillating between moments of promise and frustrating stagnation. Yet, as the first day of testing unfolded under the scorching desert sun, there was a distinct air of optimism within their garage. Jack Doohan, stepping in for the team, wasted no time settling into a rhythm. His laps were measured, precise, and crucially fast. The data streaming into Alpine's monitors painted a picture of stability: no erratic tire degradation, no alarming balance issues, no underlying problems that could derail their progress before the season even began. It was the kind of quiet confidence that had eluded them for too long. Engineers huddled over screens, exchanging glances, nodding in satisfaction. Could it be? Could Alpine finally have built a car that could free them from the purgatory of midfield mediocrity? For years, the French squad had lived in the shadow of the frontrunners, always a step behind, always on the cusp of something greater but never quite grasping it. But now, with a car that looked far more refined, far more capable, and perhaps most crucially, far more balanced, there was genuine hope. The murmurs in the paddock grew louder. If this performance carried over into the race weekends, Alpine might just be ready to throw a wrench into the established pecking order. Elsewhere on the grid, another team was sending ripples through the paddock. Racing Bulls, the newly rebranded AlphaTauri squad, emerged from the shadows with a machine that bore an unmistakable resemblance to Red Bull's championship-winning car. The resemblance was uncanny, almost unsettling. Every aerodynamic surface, every contour of the bodywork, every intricate detail seemed to suggest a close lineage to the dominant RB19. The whispers began immediately. Had Red Bull's junior team finally cracked the code? Was this the year they went from afterthoughts to genuine contenders? Yuki Tsunoda was relentless. Lap after lap, he pushed the car to its limits, methodically gathering data, fine-tuning his understanding of its behavior. There was an intensity to his approach, a level of focus that suggested he knew exactly what was at stake. This was no ordinary pre-season test for Racing Bulls. This was a declaration of intent. The days of languishing at the back of the midfield could be coming to an end. If their car was anywhere close to what the early data suggested, if Tsunoda and his teammates could extract its full potential, Racing Bulls might just turn the 2024 season into one of the most unpredictable in recent memory. And then, the moment that sent an electric shock through the paddock. Lewis Hamilton, the seven-time world champion, made an uncharacteristically early return to the garage. The cameras pounced, zooming in, dissecting every movement, every glance, every interaction between Hamilton and his Ferrari engineers. The speculation was instantaneous. Was it a routine tweak? A precautionary check? Or was it something deeper, something more significant? Hamilton's move to Ferrari had already rewritten the narrative of the upcoming season. It was a seismic shift, a gamble that could either cement his legacy as the greatest driver of all time or leave him regretting the decision for years to come. As he sat in the cockpit, visor down, seemingly lost in thought, the questions mounted. Was he struggling with the transition? Was the Ferrari's driving style proving to be a challenge? Or was he simply taking a quiet moment to absorb the gravity of his decision? The tension was palpable. The paddock was holding its breath. Every gesture, every word exchanged in the Ferrari garage was analyzed in real time. Hamilton had spent over a decade with Mercedes, building a dynasty, rewriting the record books. And now, in his first official outing with the prancing horse, all eyes were on him. Would he thrive in this new chapter, or had he walked into an impossible situation? The answer wouldn't come today, but the stakes couldn't be higher. But while the veterans were making headlines, a new name was beginning to steal the spotlight. Kimi Antonelli, the young Italian prodigy, was wasting no time in making his presence felt. From the moment he took to the track, there was something different about him. His approach was fearless yet calculated, his lines crisp, his pace unrelenting. With every lap, his confidence grew, and the whispers in the paddock turned into open admiration. And then it happened. Antonelli topped the timesheets. A rookie. On his debut. Leading pre-season testing. The implications were enormous. Was it a fluke? A perfect storm of ideal conditions and low fuel runs? Or was this the beginning of something special? The comparisons were inevitable. Was this a glimpse of the next great talent in Formula One? Was Antonelli about to follow in the footsteps of Hamilton, Verstappen, Schumacher, drivers who didn't just enter the sport but immediately redefined it? The pressure would be immense. The expectations would be sky high. But one thing was certain, Antonelli had announced himself in the grandest way possible. And the entire paddock had taken notice. With every lap turned, with every sector time logged, the narrative of the upcoming season was already taking shape. The rivalries were forming. The power dynamics were shifting. The intrigue was building. If pre-season testing was any indication, Formula One wasn't just heading for another season. It was on the verge of one of the most unpredictable, thrilling, and chaotic years in recent memory. The grid had never been more competitive. The unknowns had never been greater. And the excitement had never been higher. The roar of engines filled the air once again, signaling the start of a highly anticipated day of testing in Formula One. Fans, journalists, and teams alike were glued to the screens, eager to dissect every piece of data, every sector time, every minor twitch of the steering wheel. Because in this sport, nothing happens by accident. Every lap carries meaning, every setup change is a puzzle piece falling into place, and every issue, no matter how small, can become the Achilles heel that derails an entire championship campaign. This was not just about who went fastest. It was about reading between the lines, about spotting patterns and hidden weaknesses, about deciphering the messages buried in lap times and telemetry. It was about the bigger picture, and the battle had already begun. But even before the numbers could be analyzed, before conclusions could be drawn, there was already drama on the track. Aston Martin fans held their breath as Fernando Alonso's car unexpectedly slowed down. In a fraction of a second, the energy in the team's garage shifted. Engineers froze, eyes locked onto telemetry screens, searching desperately for an explanation. Was it a minor glitch? A fuel load experiment? Or was this an early warning sign of something far more serious? Alonso, with all his experience, kept his composure and continued as if nothing had happened, but those who have followed the sport for long enough knew better. In Formula One, nothing is ever insignificant. A single reliability issue in pre-season testing could be the first tremor before a seismic disaster later in the year. And Aston Martin, already under scrutiny for their inconsistent form in the second half of the previous season, could not afford any doubts creeping in. On the opposite side of the paddock, Red Bull was attacking the day with its usual ruthless efficiency. The reigning champions had no interest in playing it safe. They were pushing the limits from the get-go, using Flovis paint to map airflow and analyze the intricate details of their latest aerodynamic package. The goal was clear: to extract every last ounce of performance before the season opener. But with aggression comes risk, and Liam Lawson found that out the hard way. The young talent, eager to prove himself, pushed too deep into a braking zone and locked up, leaving his tires with visible flat spots. Not a catastrophic moment, but a small reminder that everyone was dancing on a knife's edge. In modern F1, the margin between brilliance and disaster is paper-thin. Then, the unexpected happened. As the morning session came to a close, the timing screens revealed something that no one had predicted. At the top of the leaderboard was not Verstappen, not Leclerc, not Hamilton, but Kimi Antonelli. The young Mercedes Jr. had stolen the headlines, delivering a lap that turned heads across the paddock. Fastest of the morning session, ahead of Lawson and a remarkably consistent Alex Albon in the Williams. It was an unusual sight, but that's the beauty of Formula One. Surprises lurk around every corner, and sometimes, the most unexpected names rise to the occasion. As the afternoon rolled in, anticipation built once more. New drivers took to the track, eager to leave their mark. Among them was a name that had been generating excitement for months: Gabriel Bortolito. The Brazilian talent, now stepping into F1's elite ranks, had been waiting for this moment. Fans were ready, journalists were poised, and the cameras were rolling. But just when everyone expected the action to kick off, something strange happened. The track remained silent. The grandstands were filled with murmurs of confusion. The pit lane was alive with activity, yet no car emerged. It was an eerie moment, one that highlighted the mind games already at play. The teams were holding back. Data was being crunched, last-minute setup changes were being made, and strategic decisions were unfolding behind closed garage doors. This wasn't just testing, it was psychological warfare. Each lap was an information exchange, a trade-off between revealing strengths and keeping secrets hidden. No one wanted to be the first to show their full potential. It was a high-stakes chess match, played at 200 miles per hour. But the silence couldn't last forever. One by one, the cars began rolling out, each with a mission, each with a story to tell. And as the sun began to dip below the horizon, illuminating the track in a golden glow, the realization set in. This was just the beginning. The battle lines were being drawn, the first chapters of the 2025 season were being written, and every single moment on track carried weight. In the world of Formula One, nothing is ever just a test. It's a statement. And the fight for supremacy had well and truly begun. The first brave soul to take on the asphalt was none other than Isaac Hadjar, the young French talent representing Racing Bulls. The sun had barely risen when he rolled out of the pit lane, his car slicing through the crisp morning air. His installation lap was smooth, methodical, calculated, an opening move in what was set to be an intense day of testing. Moments later, Esteban Ocon followed, his Haas roaring into life as he joined the fray. But then, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. The reigning world champion, Max Verstappen, emerged from the Red Bull garage, his presence alone sending ripples through the paddock. This was no ordinary testing day. This was a statement of intent. Verstappen wasted no time. His car was dialed in with surgical precision, every input measured, every reaction studied. The Dutchman had mastered the art of extracting every ounce of performance from his machine, and today was no different. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc took a different approach, opting for a relentless mileage accumulation stint in his Ferrari. Lap after lap, he pushed the SF25 to its limits, gathering critical data for the Maranello squad. Then, the unexpected happened. The weather took a sudden turn, shifting from a mild, predictable climate to an unpredictable battleground. The dark clouds looming on the horizon weren't just a dramatic backdrop, they were a warning. A light drizzle began to fall, transforming the track into a greasy, treacherous surface. Instantly, strategies were thrown into chaos. Some teams chose caution, keeping their cars in the garage to avoid unnecessary risks. Others saw opportunity. The brave ones ventured out, seizing the chance to gather invaluable wet weather data, knowing that in Formula One, information is everything. And then came a twist no one had anticipated. George Russell, the man often overlooked in the past 2 seasons, suddenly emerged as the fastest driver on the track. His lap time was electric. Was this the return of Mercedes? The whispers in the paddock grew louder. After 2 seasons in the shadows, could the Silver Arrows finally be ready to reclaim their former glory? Meanwhile, over in the Sauber garage, an innovation quietly stole the spotlight. The Swiss outfit had introduced an ingenious new feature, LED indicators on their wheel guns, turning green when a tire was perfectly fitted. A tiny detail in the grand scheme of things, but in a sport where the smallest margins can separate victory from defeat, this could be a game changer. Just as the session settled into a rhythm, chaos erupted. Out of nowhere, a power failure struck the circuit, plunging the paddock into momentary darkness. Engineers scrambled, mechanics reached for flashlights, and the FIA was left with no choice but to wave the red flag. A complete halt. Work in the garages continued under dim emergency lights as teams adapted to the bizarre situation. The FIA, swift to react, extended the session to compensate for lost time, ensuring that no team was shortchanged in their testing allocation. As soon as the green flag dropped again, the intensity skyrocketed. A thrilling cat-and-mouse battle unfolded between Bortolito and Verstappen, the two fighting not for position but for supremacy in their warm-up laps. Each trying to outmaneuver the other, gaining psychological ground before their true flying laps began. It was a reminder that even in testing, mind games play a crucial role. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz, now dressed in Williams colors, was methodically clocking in laps. The Spaniard, known for his relentless work ethic, was determined to make an impression with his new team. His pace was solid, but mistakes crept in, Small errors that could be ironed out with time, but reminders that adapting to a new car is never an overnight process. And just when it seemed like the session was winding down, Lando Norris delivered a bombshell. A last gasp lap that sent him to the top of the timing sheets. The McLaren garage erupted in quiet celebration. Was this a sign of things to come? Had McLaren finally built a car capable of consistently challenging at the sharp end? But this is testing. And testing can be deceptive. What do these results truly mean? Is Mercedes really back in the hunt? Has Ferrari finally delivered a title-worthy machine? Could Red Bull's apparent struggles signal the end of their dominance? Or is this all just smoke and mirrors, a grand illusion before the real battle begins? One thing is certain, this is just the beginning of what promises to be a season like no other. In just a few short weeks, the teams will converge for the first Grand Prix of the season, and when the lights go out, all speculation will be laid to rest. Until then, every team will be working tirelessly, every engineer crunching data, every strategist calculating every possible scenario. Because in Formula One, preparation is everything. And as we stand on the edge of what could be a seismic shift in the competitive order, one question remains. Are we witnessing the dawn of a new era? Could this be the year Lewis Hamilton secures his historic 8th title, but this time in Ferrari red? Is Antonelli truly the next generational talent? Will Verstappen maintain his iron grip on the sport, or is his throne finally under threat? One thing is for sure, the 2025 Formula One season is shaping up to be an absolute thriller. And we will be here, dissecting every moment, analyzing every development, and bringing you every twist, every breakthrough, and every controversy as they unfold. So what's your take? Who's your pick for the championship? Will Red Bull remain the undisputed kings, or are we on the brink of a power shift? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and make sure to subscribe, because trust me, you won't want to miss a second of what's coming next. The countdown has begun. The battle lines are drawn. The future of Formula One is about to be rewritten. Buckle up.